friends, it's Mari here with another episode of Tried, Trendy, and True. Today I'm going to be creating this A2 size card that you can see here using a bunch of products from Honeybee Stamps. Now, trendy right now in the card making industry are layering stencils and layering dies, and I absolutely love these two different types of tools in my card making stash. I'm going to be using the Tall Pines layering stencil and the Lovely Layers Owl layering die set. I'm going to coordinate those with the Sweet Stacks ovals from Honeybee Stamps as well. And I'm starting off my process here with one of the Tall Pine stencils. This is the first stencil in the 4 stencil set, and I've laid that over top of some white cardstock. Now that white cardstock is sticking to my Altenew stamp wheel mat, and that cardstock is just sticking to that so nicely with that stencil over top. I'm going to be using some Gina K inks here and my Gina K blending tool to blend some ink onto my white cardstock through this stencil. Now I'm starting off here with light spruce, and I'm using 3 different tones of that color family, the light spruce, medium spruce, and dark spruce. I just want to create some different colors of pines for each one of these stencils to create a contrast. So for this first stencil, I'm only using the light spruce, and so that this layer of this layering stencil will have just that color of trees. And you can just see here I'm using a clockwise and counterclockwise motion with that ink to create that blend. The Gina K inks are beautiful for ink blending. They are fantastic inks just with this self-smoothing agent in them that just creates the most gorgeous blended ink. And so here's that medium spruce that I was speaking about, and I have switched out my stencil. I've got the second stencil now on the cardstock. These stencils are super easy to line up. There's little etched marks on the stencil where you can see that it lines up with what you've already stenciled, and so it's really easy to see how to line this up so that you don't get any stenciling over another area, etc. So here you can just see again I'm using that clockwise counterclockwise motion to add the ink through the different openings in this layering stencil, and you can just see how our background is starting to form with this ink blending. So this is really super easy to do. You could do a bunch of different types of techniques here with your ink blending. You could create some darks and lights if you want. Whatever different types of techniques you want to incorporate with your stenciling. Now, I really love this stamp wheel mat from Altenew. It really does make it super easy because your paper and your stencil stick to that mat, and you can see that the clear mat is actually sticking to my work surface, which happens to be a black with white grid self-healing mat. So now I'm using that dark spruce, and again you can just see how gorgeous that is. Really pretty. I love the contrast again, like I said, of those 3 colors from light, medium, and dark. Now there isn't a 4th color in this family of colors, so I used another Gina K ink. This one is called Christmas Pine. The Christmas Pine color coordinates beautifully with these other 3 colors of ink. It's different, so it's going to contrast with the other 3 colors, and it's just going to add in this really beautiful pine tree color, which I really love as well. So here I have the 4th and last stencil from the Tall Pine stencil set. I've added that onto the cardstock, lining up with those etched lines on the stencil. It's really nice that the stencil is clear. It makes it really super easy to line it up. And I'm just looking for all of the different openings in this stencil, which are easy to find because it's all the white areas that are left. This is the last stencil in this set. So all of the white areas that I have open are the ones that I have to finish up here. So just using that clockwise and counterclockwise blending motion here, I'm just double checking to make sure I have everything. Here's the peel reveal, and I'm just lifting that off of my mat. You can just see how gorgeous that is. So really love this. This would be really pretty for some holiday cards around Christmas time as well. Now I'm taking my Sweet Stack oval. I chose one that is going to fit onto the front of an A2 size card nicely, and I'm just going to go ahead and center that onto my background. I'm going to use my Gemini 2 from Crafter's Companion to die cut out that oval. I'm just going to release that, and that's just going to give a really nice background for the owl that I'm also going to be die cutting. Now I'm going to use the oval that's slightly larger, the next size up from the one that I used for the pine tree background, to die cut out some black for a layer behind, or a mat behind, the pine trees. Now I'm using my Bitty Buzz cutter from Honeybee to cut out the smaller pieces, and I'm going to die cut my owl from a bunch of different browns, mostly browns, for this owl that I'm going to be using here today. So I'm just going to go ahead and start here with paper that's craft. So this is just a craft brown color. You can just see how great that die cuts with that Bitty Buzz cutter. Just going to cut that out and get that as my base. Now I'm going up to the next color of brown here. Now I grabbed these colors from my scrap box, so I don't know what companies these come from or what colors they are exactly, but I just tried to use different colors of brown so that the layers that I'm going to be having here are going to show up. So I started with my lightest. This is kind of like a medium brown. It's not the darkest brown that I'm going to be using, and you can just see how nicely that layers over top. Now I'm going to go in with a black for this layer, but I think I end up changing this up. Let's just watch and see here as I create this. I think I did end up changing this to a darker brown if I'm not mistaken, but let's just see how this goes. So here you can just see this is another layer here. I wanted a contrasting layer so that the eyes show up really, really well, but I think I might have changed this to brown. So let's see. Now this next layer here is going to be the craft again. And this die set is really super easy to layer together. There's absolutely no guesswork with it. You can tell really easily what layer goes next. And here you can just see there, that's going to start to help to create some of the facial features of the owl. So I did repeat the craft there for that piece. And so as we get some of the features for the owl here, you can change up the colors so that you can use what is going to show up really well on the different layers. So this is the same as that black one. And I think I replaced the black with the dark brown. And now I'm going to die cut this piece here. And this is going to add some more features to the face of our owl as well. And just die cutting that out. And this one, I actually ended up recutting this one because I wanted some of the features to show up a little bit more with the white. So this will all make sense when you see me starting to adhere my owl together. So I'll just go ahead, and every time I take a die off of my plate, I put it on my Spellbinders magnet holder just so that none of these small pieces get lost on my desk. And here you can just see I am going to replace, actually the black piece is going to be replaced by the white. Is that right? Yes. And then I'm going to place the brown over top of that. There we go. Okay. So now you can just see that white, which kind of gives that little sort of the little beard underneath the owl's beak is going to really show up well with that white. Now, one of the wings here is being cut next, and again just going with one of the darker browns, and this is actually the darkest color of brown, and that's going to be the lower wing, and then there's going to be a lighter wing that's going to layer over top of that. So you can see just with those different tones of the Crafton brown cardstock, we can just create all of these different layers that are going to allow the layers to show up. So you wouldn't want to die cut this all out of the same color of cardstock because the layers would not show up properly. Now this last little die that I'm cutting here are the two little tiny pieces that form the bottom portion of the eye and really define the owl's eyes. They are super, super tiny, and you have to be really careful that you don't lose those. So I'm just going to set those aside, and now I'm going to cut the branch. So I'm going to cut the branch from some gray cardstock, and I'm going to actually do a little bit of ink blending on some of these pieces a little bit later when I go to assemble the owl. So this is going to be the branch that the owl is going to sit on the bottom, towards the bottom of the focal point of the card. So now I'm ready to assemble the owl. I'm going to use my honeybee glue tube here to glue these together. And so I've got that craft base. The next layer is going to be the medium brown color. So get that glued on there. You can just see how easy it is to line these up. These layering dies are just a great way to create these super detailed images. So now I'm going on with the next layer. This is that one that I cut from white. Originally I cut that from black, but you'll be able to see here just how nice this white pops, as opposed to the black just would have been a little bit dark on the dark side. And now this little piece here is I think this is the medium brown color. And that's just going to add some definition to our little owl's face. This is the darkest brown, and I'll add that on as that wing there. And all of the etchings or embossed lines on the owl really, really help line everything up. So Honeybee has thought of everything here when it comes to helping you line up these different layers for the layering dies. And here's just that little facial feature piece. And this is really going to define the eyes and the beak. So you can see how it was great to use that craft color for that piece, because it really is nice and light. And then the layer behind it is darker, so it really shows up. Now I'm going to use the liquid adhesive again to adhere these tiny little eye pieces. These are the last pieces that I cut. They are super small. I always feel like I am performing surgery when I use these tiny little pieces of any die set, but it is doable. You can do this quite easily. It's not that hard with some different little tools like tweezers, a craft pick. All of those different little things help you to get these into the right spot. So I'll just place it with the Honeybee tweezers, and then I'll just take my craft pick here and just use the really pointy end to get things into the right spot, and even remove a little bit of the glue that got on there where it shouldn't be. That little fine point of that craft pick really helps to pick up any of those extra little bits of glue. Now I'm going to use some oxide inks to add some detail to the different little bits here. So to the branch, I'm going to add a little bit of gathered twigs. And I'll just use one of my Honeybee detail brushes to add just that little bit of brown around the edges of the branch. It's just going to give it a little bit more definition and sort of shape or depth by giving that little bit of extra shadowing around the edge of the die cut. And I'm actually going to add some ink to the edges of the owl as well. And I'm going to use ground espresso for this. This is just a really nice, almost black brown. And you'll be able to see here, I'll show you up close just how great that looks to really define the edges of the owl. So it just adds that little bit of shading to the owl cardstock bits. And if you wanted, you could actually die cut all of these pieces of the owl from white and then ink blend on your color and achieve the color that way. I wanted my owl to be brown, and I don't really have a ton of different brown colors. I didn't think that would really do it justice as opposed to the cardstock. So I went with the cardstock for this one. But you can just see how nice that ground espresso really nicely defines the edges of the owl. So I'm just darkening that up a little bit just to achieve that nice depth and dimension on that gorgeous die cut owl. Isn't that beautiful? I just love the layering dies. I think they're so fun, and Honeybee does a really great job with their lovely layers. Now this is a wood grain 3D embossing folder that I have embossed with some white cardstock, and again, this is a Honeybee product. I have sized that down so that it's exactly the same size as my card front, so an A2 size card base, and my card base is a top folding tent fold. And so here you can just see I'm adding just a little bit of liquid adhesive on the back of this, and I will adhere that flat onto my card front. And that's just going to give my card front that little bit of extra texture. Now you could actually even ink blend over top of this, but I wanted this to be just to be really nice and white and crisp and clean behind the oval that is going to house the focal point, our gorgeous owl here. So I'm going to just take my pine tree stenciled piece, and I'm going to just adhere that with my liquid adhesive onto the black oval. And we're just going to get a really nice thin frame around that beautiful stenciled piece. And you can see how nicely that ink has all smoothed out. It is beautiful, not blotchy, just really, really gorgeous. I love Gina K's inks so much. And here I'm just going to center that oval onto my card front. I'm leaving a little area at the bottom for my sentiment, so I'm just being mindful of how I'm centering this on my card base. Now I'm going to use 3 pieces of foam adhesive to pop the owl up, and I'm also going to pop the little branch up as well so that it has the same amount of dimension as my owl. So I've just got that flipped over here. I'm just kind of checking out where I want that branch to be. I kind of want it coming in a little bit from over on this side so that it's sort of curved. I like that look. And so I'm just going to go ahead and add just that little bit of foam adhesive onto the back. And I'll add another little foam strip onto the other end as well. And that will be nice and dimensional and ready to have that little owl perch on top of it. So I'm going to just take that release paper off the back of my owl and get that situated, and then we'll be ready to add the sentiment to the card as well. So I'll just get that on there. I love that owl so much. And you know, you can use all kinds of different colors for the owl. You could do a snowy owl. This would be just a beautiful wintry scene as well. Now the sentiment set is called Mini Messages, and it literally has a sentiment for virtually anything that you might want to create a card for. This is one of the greatest sentiment sets of all time. I love it. It's called Mini Messages, and there's a coordinating die set called Mini Messages Banner Dies as well. Really love this so much. Now I went really boring and I chose Happy Birthday out of all of those zillions of sentiments. But I have to say that I use the Happy Birthday stamp the most out of any stamp set. And I make more birthday cards than anything else for my stash because that is actually what I give the most is birthday cards. So I am going to make this a birthday card. I've stamped that out with black ink, and I'm just going to tape that sentiment or the die over the sentiment that matches the size of that sentiment. And I'm going to run that again through my Bitty Buzz cutter and trim that out and add that to the front of my card. I love this Bitty Buzz cutter so much for small little dies. It folds up really nice and small on my desk. It does a really great job of die cutting. It's just a really great little mini die cutter. I've added a little bit of foam adhesive on the back of the sentiment, and I'll just use my honeybee tweezers here to add that onto my card. And that's going to finish off the main parts of the card. I did want to do a little bit of white splatter as well, just for a little bit of extra detail. And so that you could actually use this as a card that's sort of almost like between fall and winter, if you wanted this to kind of emulate snowfall, but I just like the look of white splatter. So that's my project today, friends. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Tried, Trendy, and True. I hope you were inspired to use layering stencils and dies.